Alright then, so of all the systems that have come out in the last 30 years, none other screams nostalgia to me quite like the Nintendo 64. For me and lots of other, I want to say youngish adults, the Nintendo 64 was a first look into a futuristic 3D world. Still gets a lot of love, and rightly so. Although at the time the console was not the best selling system, not by a long shot. In fact, in total sales, the PlayStation absolutely trounced the Nintendo 64 sales. Since the end of the 64's life cycle, certain games have been available to the millions who owned a Wii, and the tens of people that owned a Wii U through Virtual Console. What we haven't really seen recently, however, is a full remaster or a remake of any of the incredible games from back in the day. Unlike some of the PlayStation classics we've seen get a new lick of paint in recent years, Nintendo exclusives from this era seem to have been sadly a little overlooked. Apart from maybe Mario 64, that game gets about a little bit, to be fair. So I got to thinking, if Nintendo were to start remastering some of the classics from yesteryear, what games would I want to see get a makeover? In this video I'm looking at 10 Nintendo 64 classics, some that will be definitely familiar to you, and some that, well, might be less so, to come up with my choices for a makeover for the Switch. I like to say this in every list video, these are personal choices. If you don't like them, well, sorry. Let me know some of your choices down below, and as ever, if you like the video, hit the like button and subscribe to see some more Switch content. Anyway, let's get started. I figured I'd get one of the big guns out the way first. A game which I'm sure will be no surprise to anyone of its inclusion. Probably one of the most influential shooters and arguably the greatest movie tie-in game of all time. Originally developed by Rare, released in 1997, Goldeneye 007 was really one of the first popular first-person shooters with realistic graphics. From an excellent single-player adventure where you really have to think like a spy in order to advance through 18 wonderful different stages, to the exemplary multiplayer which saw a whole 4 people, it was pretty good in those days, compete in a deathmatch in 11 different arenas. It really was an innovative game and continues to inspire to this day. If you're a player who loves a good headshot, you can thank Goldeneye for that, at least on consoles. If you like being able to move the character whilst aiming your gun at the same time, thank Goldeneye again. It was truly an innovative masterpiece. As for a complete remaster, yes, we did get Goldeneye 007 on the Wii, but to be fair, the license has stopped that being a fully fledged Goldeneye remake. More like a diet Goldeneye. Still pretty good though. Check that game out if you haven't already. Although I've always been a gamer who's never been too bothered about graphical lightness, for this game it would be cool to see Pierce Brosnan look like Pierce Brosnan and not, well, Cube Headman. And see some of the levels we've got to know and love over the years get less Minecrafty might be great as well. The Nintendo 64 did not sell well in Japan. In fact, in comparison to the PlayStation and even the Sega Saturn, the Nintendo 64 flopped. And yet despite this, one of my favourite, and in my opinion, one of the most underrated games on the system is the most Japanese game I've ever played in my life. Now, I don't tend to lean towards cultural stereotypes, but anyone who's played Mystical Ninja starring Gearman will know exactly what I'm talking about. There's giant robots, there's smaller robots, there's ninjas, obviously. There's sushi, there's shrines. I mean, granted the game is set in Japan, but my days it might be a bit of a culture shock to some people out there. What really separates this game from other action platformers and the many platformers on the Nintendo 64 is the fantastical nature of it. The plot sees 4 heroes, Gearman, Ebisumaru, Sasuke, and Yae travel around Japan fending off the evil Peach Mountain shoguns who have set out to turn Japan into some sort of westernized stage for their talent. Along the way you'll be saving dragons, collecting cat shrines and fighting in mega giant robot suits to save the day. The crisp controls are brilliant and the Japanese music is truly unique and very catchy. The writing as well is also a real high point, which I was a little bit surprised about considering it was translated directly from Japanese dialogue. I thought some of the humour might get lost along the way, but it's simply not the case. Now I know there are a number of 3D platformers already on the Switch, but this game is something truly individual and I would personally love to see some kind of remaster of this gem on the hybrid system, or even a sequel. That'd be kind of cool as well. The third game I want to talk about is quite possibly one of, if not my all-time favourite karting game. Again developed by Rare, Diddy Kong Racing was an all-encompassing karting experience which let you race not only in a kart, but also a hovercraft and even a plane to experience each level in a completely different way. The game also sees an introduction to Conquer the Squirrel and Banjo, who you might see again later in the video. What also separates this game from others in the genre, aside from the vehicle choice, is the overworld you navigate in order to get to different areas and tracks. The tracks themselves are imaginative and follow similar themes to what you'd probably see in other karting games. For example, there's your classic run-of-the-mill racing track, snow-themed tracks, beach and horror-themed tracks. But the fact you can race in a choice of vehicle keeps the game fresh and kept me wanting to play more and more. The music's also a real highlight of the game. Up until last week I hadn't played the game in a few years, yet the music brought the memories flooding back. As much as I love Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and enjoyed Crash Team Racing, I think there's definitely room for Diddy Kong Racing on the Switch. If not, it would be great to see the long lost Donkey Kong Racing, which was cancelled when Rare was sold to Microsoft, which is just a crying shame. It'd be great to see that. A game not developed by Rare and goes very much against the stream of 3D platform games released for the Nintendo 64. Mischief Makers is a 2D, I know, it's weird, isn't it? Well, 2.5D action platformer released in 1997. In the game he plays Marina, a robotic maid who sets out to save her creator from the dastardly emperor of planet Clancer. The moveset of Marina and aesthetic of the game and character really set this game apart from other 2D platformers. The game relies heavily on a swift boost mechanic and the ability to grab, shake and throw enemies and friends alike to solve puzzles and attack when need be. The game's visuals rely on models pre-rendered in 3D, a little bit like the original Donkey Kong Country, and include these terrifying scream-like faces everywhere. It's a good game and it's different. Some people will probably say that controlling the game wasn't always the easiest. Considering it's a 2D platformer, it seems unusual that pretty much every button on the N64 controller was used. However, that's a good thing about remasters. They can edit the controls however they like. Yes, there are hundreds of 2D platformers on the Switch already, but one more wouldn't hurt, I don't think. This one's pretty good. If you want a competent, realistic wrestling game on the Switch based on real wrestlers with real wrestling mechanics, you won't find one. You might be thinking, didn't we have a WWE game? Yes, we did have a WWE game. There you go. There's also 2K Battlegrounds, but realistic? No. What can we use to scratch that itch? Well, easy. Let's simply go back 20 years to when wrestling was good and remaster a game from then. There's a few to choose from, but it'll be no surprise to anyone who's played the game that WWF No Mercy would have to be my game of choice for a remaster. Its realistic character design, again, stellar championship mode and a cohesive builder wrestler mode cements this game for me as the best the 64 had to offer. It takes the behemoth that was wrestling in the 90s and lets you be the star. The game gives you a story for each belt and changes depending on the winner of certain matches. It's not just a case of lose a match, try again, which I think is great and gives the match much more replayability. For a remaster, I think it would be quite simple. Give the game some modern day graphics, add a few more characters and include full entrance themes and you'll be on to a winner. Whether it will happen, probably not, but I can dream. This game really was an easy pick for me. Donkey Kong is known primarily for its 2D action platformers, and rightly so. Pretty much every one of them's brilliant, including, FYI, Tropical Freeze on Switch. So play that, it's really good. They're imaginative, crisp and gameplay-wise superb and responsive games. But as was the trend with the Nintendo 64, 2D was simply outdated. And to Rare, again, to give a bit of 3D pokery, and what we are left with, Donkey Kong 64. For me, I'll always have fond memories of the game, partly because of the sick monkey rap you get at the start of the game. To me, it's easily comparable with the Pokemon rap. Gameplay is fairly similar to many of the other 3D platformers of the time, but now you can unlock and play as one of 5 characters. Either Donkey, Diddy, Lanky, Tiny or Chunky Kong, all with their own strengths, weaknesses and moveset. The story sees Donkey Kong heading out to rescue his friends and his beloved golden bananas from the dastardly King K. Rool. Something else which comes to mind when reminiscing about DK64 is collectibles. So many collectibles. If you're a hoarder and like collecting, you'll love this game. There are golden bananas, 25 for each character. Regular bananas, 100 per character per level. Blueprints, banana medals, 1 for each of the apes in each level. Banana fairies, crowns, keys, a Nintendo coin and a Rareware coin. Basically, if you want to complete the game, it will take a while. That being said, it's a fun world to play around in. It plays as a competent 3D platformer and is a strong introduction to Donkey Kong in the third dimension. It's a shame really that at the moment the introduction to a fully fledged 3D Donkey Kong was also its swan song. I personally love to see it getting remade for the Switch. Again, whether it will happen, I doubt it, but you never know. Again, a sequel would be great. Any kind of 3D Donkey Kong would be fab. I think an excellent aspect to the Nintendo 64 was the amount of purely creative games that came out of it. Overall, in terms of the amount of games we saw, it's not the most expansive library. However, some of the games we did see were truly different and imaginative. I think as a first delve into the third dimension, Nintendo and other developers for the 64 pushed the boat out in terms of creative and experimental games. Enter Space Station, Silicon Valley, a game where you, as a teeny tiny microchip, inhabit different animals on the Silicon Valley space station in order to proceed and save the world. There's a little more to it than that, but really that's the gist of what goes on here. It's another 3D platformer, however, differs greatly to others on the system by way of its gameplay. As the microchip, you're able to inhabit different defeated characters and attain that animal's stature and physical ability. If you're a mouse, you're quick and speedy. If you're a rabbit, you can hop around. If you're a sheep, you can float, apparently. The puzzles used to advance to the next area revolves around the choice of animals you can inhibit in a particular level. It's a very clever system and gave me a strange Mario Odyssey kind of feeling. Maybe they'd also played the game as well. Also, the game does give me feelings of like an old Cartoon Network show, which is always great. Anyway, I'm fully aware that there are some weird, wacky and imaginative games on the Switch. I could and probably will do a whole video on just some of them at some point. But as a 3D platformer with different gameplay elements, Space Station Silicon Valley is definitely one I'd love to see get some sort of remaster on the Switch. A bit of a forgotten gem in my opinion. The next game doesn't need an introduction, really. It's quite simply one of, if not the most influential and accomplished video games of all time. I'm really putting this game here as I do believe it's probably one of the games we might actually see get a proper remaster in the next year with Zelda's 35th anniversary. Now I know we've got Skyward Sword remaster on the way, but it really wouldn't surprise me if we saw this game in one form or another on the Switch. Especially after the 35th celebrations we got for Mario. They really went all out for that little guy. I can only imagine that anyone watching this video has played, if not at least heard, of Ocarina of Time. It's the first foray into the third dimension for Zelda, and honestly, they didn't really put a foot wrong. The world as a whole, the character design, the dungeon designs are all superb. Even the dreaded water temple. The music is iconic and instantly recognisable. Quite simply, the world they built felt much larger than it even was, and that comes from an expansive story. It's not just a simple save the princess type story, but in fact goes much deeper, with sages, powerful weapons, and even time travel thrown in the mix. You can spot elements from this game in every Zelda game preceding it, and there's a reason why. Now I know full well we've seen this game in different forms over the years on different consoles, most recently on the 3DS, but to get a full remake on the Switch really would tickle my fancy. Also, Nintendo, if you fancy giving us Majora's Mask, that'd be swell as well. Now there's probably a few games that some people might have expected to see on this list. However, for me, there's a few games that, although were revolutionary and unique at the time, have been improved onto such a point that remastering old versions of the game seems reductive. For example, Mario Kart 64 is a fine example of a karting game. But with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe already on the Switch, complete with remastered levels from the N64 game, really, what's the point? Also Smash Brothers. On the Switch we've got Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, so really, why bother with Smash Brothers from the N64? Same with Mario Tennis and Mario Golf coming later this year. One game, however, I feel bucks the trend of this argument is Mario Party. Because the thing is with Mario Party is that over the years there have been such a variation of minigames and boards that nothing would please me more than to have Mario Party 2, or at least sections of Mario Party 2, ported over as DLC for the Switch version. I'm sure it's not just me who would have liked to have had a Mario Party Ultimate in the same vein what we got with Smash Brothers. Even to have a few more boards and minigames added, remastered from this classic second iteration, would be sufficient in my eyes. I mean, this is purely from a nostalgic stand. As somebody who played the original party games to death as a kid, and with the second one being my favourite, it's hard not to give it a shout out in this video. The final game on this list sees me go back to Rare for possibly one of my personal favourite 3D platformers of all time. You saw him earlier in Diddy Kong Racing, but this game is all about Banjo and his bird friend Kazooie. Part of me almost left this game off the list because to be quite honest, a simple port of the game would be good enough for me. It's aged that well and still looks as good today as it ever did. BanjoKazooie, for me, takes all the best bits from the best platformers and throws them together. It's got one of my favourite soundtracks, with a banjo, because, you know, BanjoKazooie. It's got a witty, funny, but not in a forced way, script. The humour's on point. The gameplay is unique, especially for the time it was released. To be honest, I'm struggling to think, to this day, of a gameplay mechanic as uniquely varied as BanjoKazooie. Having such contracting characters, and being able to use them both at once gave this game so much more in terms of what you could do with the puzzles and the levels. Really shone. Also, the story is whimsically dark, with the charming Gruntilda the witch taking Banjo's sister Tooty hostage. Her big plan is to take Tooty's beauty for herself. Banjo and Kazooie set out to save them. It's been 13 years since we last saw these unlikely friends in their own 3D adventure with the Xbox exclusive nuts and bolts. I think it's about time it returns to its rightful home. Nintendo, sort it out. Anyway guys, that was my list of 10 Nintendo 64 games I would love to see remastered for the Nintendo Switch. Realistically, the chances of seeing any of them actually remastered is pretty slim, but a boy can dream. There's just 10 games I think would fit in well at home on the hybrid system. There are quite a few more games I could put there, but I don't want to waffle on for the rest of the day. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, hit subscribe, and comment down below games that you would love to see remastered for the Switch. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.